Okay, so I basically redid all my presentation right now because I really loved what I heard about foreign fighters from the West. And I'm like, I wish I was a foreign fighter from the West, coming back to France, sitting in prison in France. I mean, it would be cute. Well, not the case. So I'm going to be talking about Eastern Europe and everything that is that way that usually no one would care about, as usual. But I could proudly say my ex-countrymen from USSR, Stockholm, New York. We could name all those, attacks, Turkey, airport, so on. So now, actually, everyone could just flip the globe and look from the other side a little bit, just because it actually the problem that isn't there, and it's a colossal problem, reached everywhere else. So we could not just ignore that part now. And the same thing with ex-foreign fighters, because maybe we don't have those cute foreign fighters like who are doing the, this rapper from Germany. We don't have this sexy girl from England, but ex-USSR takes by numbers. I mean, how many from Sweden in general? I would say there were 10 Russian-speaking Jamaats in ISIS. So it's you could not compare the numbers. And I'm talking only about ISIS. I'm not talking about Jabhat al-Nusra, Jamaat or Katiba now, Imam Bukhari, which is just, solely Russian-speaking Uzbeks, and Ajnat al-Kafkas, which by definition of the word Ajnat al-Kafkas is Kafkas. So it's a very important area because by numbers it's just, majority of foreign fighters, I would say, okay, well, maybe Tunisia, but in terms of Europe, because also talking about Tunisia, well, Tunisian, last time I checked, could not just go on a flight and just end up somewhere, in Europe. Well, from ex-USSR, you could do it. From Georgia, you don't even need visa. So also you could buy ex-USSR passports like Ukraine and also land somewhere very easy. So it becomes a problem. So let's talk about foreign fighters who are from that area and foreign fighters who are already back. I'm not talking about, usually, to be honest, Chechen foreign fighters don't survive to prison in Iraq and Syria. They don't make it to Baghdad airport prison, or they didn't make it to Al-Hol prison. I mean, the male prison near Al-Hol, they just didn't. So let's talk about, Shishani is a code word in Middle East for everything, terrible. So who made it out? And for that, we need to see when they left. So why male foreign fighters went there in the first place? Leadership, those people want power, totally fine. Money, yes, there was a lot of money in this business. Just for fun, that's okay, they didn't play war, they went there to do so. Religious folks, professionals, military professionals, and stupid people. I mean, we could go about political correctness, but I interviewed 300 of foreign fighters in Iraq and Syria, and some of them are really in this classification. While it's important to mention that some of them are really not. One of the smartest people I met. So why it's important to, classify them that way? Because not everyone survives with equal chance of doing so. So, for example, stupid people, dead. So we don't care about them anymore. Thanks God we don't have to care about, stupid people. So they're dead. Because, they were stupid even in ISIS, so they managed them to put in a suicide car and they were gone. So religious hardcore people. And here we need to divide religious hardcore on religious hardcore who want to go to heaven. So they're quite dumb religious hardcore. So they also volunteered for suicide car right away. Or they're also religious very hardcore. Those people are very important because they're outside of Islamic State right now. There is no Islamic State, but they were outside in 2015. Because those are the people who left ISIS because ISIS was not radical enough for them. It's a very important group. They're called, especially in ex-USSR area, they're called chain takfiris. They were following a couple of sheikhs, but they left ISIS because ISIS was not radical enough. I think it could be the end of the sentence, right? But it does not mean that they are violent, because they are religiously very radical. But I know personally a couple of them, they're in hiding right now in Europe, and they are not like involved in anything. Like they're retired, so they're so radical that they're just sitting in a corner and studying whatever they're studying. So they kind of not violent anymore. Okay, so who are left? Actual people who left and survived and out of the any conflict zone right now, and most likely are also free in terms of ex-USSR. Those are the people who went for money, because basically the money was going down and they left. As easy as that. And if you go to ISIS for money, you're not gonna suicide. It doesn't make sense. So it's people who went for money, professionals. Professionals here, I mean like military professions. For example, Uzbeks from IMU, Islamic Movement Uzbekistan, Waziristan folks, who were main trainers in ISIS camps. And I mean, for example, like Yugur Jamaat, who was training Yugur Jamaat, apparently also Uzbeks from IMU. Professionals in that sense, plus professionals in the sense of like money laundering, buying weapons. Those are Caucasus, a lot of Caucasus fellas, because they just, the war was there forever, so they kind of know all the roads. Dark market, black market in Europe is very Russian speaking with accent I sometimes don't understand. So those are the people who got out on time, that they managed to get out, which is 13, 14. When ISIS was going down, the borders was about to close, but they were smart enough to get out. Okay, so those are the folks who are out now. What's going on in their home countries? Because to understand where they're now and what they're up to, it's, two sides of the game, who they are and what they want, and what their government does and will do. So here let's talk about, I don't want to name and shame any country. I mean, a lot of those countries are already named and shamed. It doesn't matter. Like I'm more interested, as an academic, I'm more interested in the logic of what's going on. So for example, those people actually, like by any definition, should end up in prison, right? Just because. Well, it doesn't happen that way, because in those countries, the law probably doesn't even work. So for example, we could, ratify whatever this beautiful thing was named before. I don't know those laws. Well, I think a lot of those countries would not even learn about them. Just why? So you could always buy your way out of prison in those countries in the first place. And those folks who got out, who went to ISIS for money, and because they were professionals, well, they have money and they know what they're doing by definition of that, so they don't end up in prison. They buy their way out. And they like openly walking around. So then we have, who is in prison then in those countries? And we're talking about new generation of ISIS. Again, because of the corruption. So you could not, so I'm like, for example, a law enforcement in some country somewhere, and I need to report to UN that I'm doing something because, first of all, my government, I'm an obscure country, I'm getting money from kind of international organization for something nice, like de-radicalization, these words. So I need to report that I do something, right? Because otherwise I'm not going to get money. So whom am I going to put in prison? Of course, I could not put people, who came from ISIS, because first of all, they're dangerous. Second of all, they have money. Why? No. So I need to put some random people. And random people, it's very interesting and easy to put them in prison, especially after the laws were changed that, by UN. So UN made some kind of a law that everyone ratified, that now you could not charge people with mercenary charge that they were charged before. You need to charge them with terrorism, which is like now 35 years, whatever. So when a lot of law enforcement people in a lot of those countries heard, oh my God, 35 years. Could you imagine the bribe that we could be asking now? Well, it's not like mercenary 2 years, This guy could actually sit there and sleep for 2 years. But 35 years, that's a lot of cash. So they started arresting a lot of people, like, for nothing. So, for example, I know those cases. I was in a lot of trials and that nature in several countries. Like WhatsApp. There is a very annoying feature in WhatsApp that the picture that someone sends you, they download on your cell phone. There is a very annoying feature. You don't, and many times you don't know how to turn it off, and it downloads everything and blocks your memory. So I know one country, again, I would not mention it, but like they are putting in prison people for terrorism when like someone send them some of this violent content, and it like automatically download on cell phone. Like they didn't resend it to anyone. They didn't even download it. It was automatically downloaded. So they put those folks in prison, or they ask for bribes. And to pay bribes not to go to prison, their families sell their house, the only thing that they have. So, of course, it's a very nice new generation of, foreign fighters that is already being created based on those beautiful laws that we enforced in this country. And, leadership helps them a lot. The leadership of ISIS, those nice people who did not end up in prison. I mean, of course, they also kind of love it because it's the next generation that is already, running there. What's going on in those prisons? So there is a little bit very complicated context of ex-USSR prisons. So ex-USSR prisons, since before the Second World War, were not run by actually, prison authorities. They were run by kind of gangs. In English, it would be a gang. It's thief and loss structure, but whatever. They were not run by, professional convicts, right? So they were called like black prison. They were red government, black criminals. They were black prisons. So now there is a thing as green prisons. So the people who are in like Jamaats, who are religious radical, they already taken the prison from the criminals. Like, could you imagine how criminals are pissed? So we had to interview some people in one prison, and usually you ask the criminal gang leader of the prison if you could interview someone in his prison. And he was like, oh, no, this guy is not in my jurisdiction. You need to ask a mayor of the prison. You have a mayor of the prison? Well, apparently right now, yes. So this is a terrible situation that is going on in those prisons. Where, there are a lot of people who should not be there, and there are a lot of people who should be there, and they're not there because of corruption and, those beautiful things. Then how do a lot of those people end up in Europe and conduct some kind of, violent, terrorist attack, being afraid of being deported home? In several countries, not all of the countries, but in several countries, authorities are also very afraid, not only of those radical people, but radical people who were active in like prison Jamaats. So when they have to, their charge is over, so their prison sentence is over, so they have to be released. It's kind of well-known and thing that you need to leave because you're going to be rearrested. Either you would be killed in some kind of a special operation, whatever, they would be looking for something, and of course they're going to find it in your car. But also, you have to leave the country. So that's when a lot of them, when they got out of prison, and they know that they're not going to be free, for a long time, even if they don't do anything, just because government's a little bit afraid of them, they go to Europe. They go somewhere. So a lot of them, before went to Syria. Now Syria is closed. They have to go somewhere. So they go to Europe. And of course, they're terrified of being deported back. So that's why, they end up doing a lot of those bad things. So this is, you saw the previous presentations were said, and, no, they were okay compared to this, we see here on that side of the world when, government doesn't work, there is tons of corruption, and of course it's all used by foreign fighters and to create new fighters. So I guess it tells us that we need to be more careful with adopting those international standards that we come up to serve purposes of Western countries and pass them through UN, and then they become international standards that we need to do, without actually looking on how they're going to play out in other countries. not taking into account, their individual problems. Because, something that we could adopt and enforce through UN resolution, they could really backfire in other environments. So I guess that's it, my presentation. Thanks.